these same terms will also be covered in lab tomorrow, right? So we got 3 labs. Who's in the 7 o'clock lab? Okay, bright and early. Who's in the 9:30 lab? We should have a handful in the 3:30 lab, right? Okay. Again, if something comes up from one week to the next and you need to switch to another lab, just let me know beforehand. We'll make sure that there's room there in that lab for you, and you can do that. All right, so I drew this guy all by myself, believe it or not. And he is in, or she, it's amorphous, wearing shorts. In the official anatomical position, okay? Which is lying face up, okay, with palms up. And the feet, I had a little trouble with. It only has 4 toes on each foot. Okay, but this is the official anatomic position. Now, if someone was going in for an amputation of some sort, and the position was mixed up, what would that result in? Let's say you were going to have their right leg amputated. It would amputate the wrong leg. And that actually happens more often than it should, where the doctor amputates the wrong limb, okay? You can Google it and find some articles on it. It's not always because of this. It's not always because it could be a mistake somewhere else along the line. But this has happened where somebody's amputated the wrong leg or whatever, and then they have to amputate the other leg. So that's not a good situation to be in. Okay, and we'll go over a lot of the other anatomical terms as well. But this is why it's important, or one of the reasons why it's important to have a standard terms for locations of the body that are going to be universal for anyone that's working with the patient. Okay, one of the things also to talk about is you have body cavities. So you have space within your body where it's filled with organs, but not completely. So there's air floating around in different parts of your body, or fluid filling those spaces. Okay, so I have here drawn both of these cavities, more or less the organs inside of them. And this is your abdominopelvic, we're going to take a step back first. This is the dorsal body cavity. Sorry? Yeah, you're right. It's ventral. Thank you. All right. See, I would have amputated this guy all the wrong way. I said, cut off my front half. I would have cut off the back. All right. So dorsal means towards the back, and ventral means towards the belly. Okay. So this then is the brain and spinal cord. So this is our dorsal body cavity on this side. Okay, and we're going to split these up into smaller sections. So the dorsal body cavity has your cranial cavity and your vertebral or spinal cavity. I'm running out of room. Okay, so your brain sits in that cranial cavity. The spinal cord sits in that vertebral cavity, and it runs through your vertebrae. Your vertebrae have a big hole in them. It's where it fits. All right. The ventral body cavity we split into 2 major regions. The thoracic cavity and then our abdominopelvic cavity. All right, and what structure separates the two? All right, so we have our diaphragm, which is the muscle used in breathing. There are other muscles as well, but that's the one that does most of the work. Okay, the thoracic cavity has two cavities kind of squished within there as well. You have one lining the lungs, called the pleural cavity. And the one around the heart, called the pericardial just call it the pericardium, but that's what's going to surround your heart, okay? And then they have within their serous membranes. Serous membranes are, you have all these organs, squished together within these cavities. And you're going to move around, and as you do so, they're going to rub up against each other. And so to prevent the friction between them, the serous membranes secrete a fluid which prevents then tissue damage from that friction, okay? And those have specific names based on where they are in the cavities. And there's one for the cavity and there's one for the organ within there. All right, so we're going to do a little chart here. And we'll draw our, let's do organs here. We've got the lungs, we've got the heart, and we'll call everything else the viscera. Okay, so these organs have a lining around the whole body cavity itself. Oops, hold on. Yeah. And that's going to have this, the first word's going to be parietal. So the parietal pleura is the whole cavity. So the thoracic cavity, or the pleural cavity, is lined by the parietal pleura. Okay, and then you have serous membrane surrounding, again, the organ itself. And for the lungs, this is called the visceral pleura. Okay, and then it follows the same pattern for the other ones. So the parietal pericardium surrounds the heart chamber, so all the way around pericardium, and then the visceral pericardium is physically touching the heart itself. Okay, and then in the abdominopelvic cavity, you have the parietal, peritoneum, and that's going to align the whole abdominopelvic cavity, and then all those organs in there, so the liver, the intestines, the stomach. Be surrounded in their own serous membrane. Okay, both of them are secreting fluid, so they all prevent friction between the organs within there, and they lubricate those spaces, lubricate those cavities.
Is that an I-O or just an O on the part there?
So that dot should not be there.
Okay.
There you go. Okay, so those are the body cavities and the serous membrane surrounding it. Yes?
Can you repeat the thing about the fluid rubbing stuff?
Okay, so these are the names of the serous membranes. These are lining both the cavities and the organs themselves. And they both secrete fluid, which allows for lubrication, so that when your heart is beating and bumping up against your lungs, there's layers of fluid between them and they don't cause friction and damage themselves. Yeah?
Fluid would be synovium, right? Just like how you have synovium in your joints, you have the same thing.
Well, it's a different type of fluid. It's serous fluid. But synovial fluid is another type of fluid produced by a membrane to prevent the same thing, to prevent friction. Yeah?
And you said that viscera refers to the entire abdominopelvic cavity?
So viscera always refers to the organ itself, okay? So, but yeah, it applies to, so the liver is surrounded in visceral peritoneum. So are the intestines, so are
So each
the other
organ
things.
in the abdominopelvic cavity has its own visceral peritoneum?
Yes. And then the whole cavity itself surrounding everything.
Parietal.
Right. Yes.
That's a good question.
Okay, good. All right, but just remember, viscera means organs, so it's referring to organs. Okay, so that term, is specifically talking about the organ. Okay, any other questions? Yes, Bruce?
There should be some sort of pronunciation that you can give us.
There should be There should be in the book.
Okay.
Yeah,
I can see very
that's fine. Pronounce it however you want. Yeah, they'll correct you in med school. I won't. Okay. Peritoneum, whatever helps you spell it. That's kind of at this point what you should do. When you say it wrong in front of a doctor, then they can. Who knows what they're doing? Then they can correct it. Yeah. Yep.
So the parietal and the visceral, are they two separate membranes actually? Because the book has it drawn as sort of like one thing that's being pushed down by the heart, sort of like this. Like you gave an example.
Right. Yeah, they are connected.
They're connected, but they're all two separate membranes. Like they're considered separate.
We consider we consider them separate, but they are actually extensions within each other.
Okay.
I mean, it gives the example in the book of like a balloon. So like when it was first formed, I guess, it would be like a balloon, and then the organs kind of push into it. So then now you have two layers next to each other, but it is all one continuous membrane. But yeah, that's a good anatomical detail to point out. Okay, so we're going to move on. We're going to also...
One quick question.
this is a little more straightforward. The abdominopelvic regions, looking at it from the outside, if someone was in the anatomical position, are split into 9 regions just to help orient different organs which are in that area, or other things as well. So this is going from, you would have the ribs kind of ending right here, and then the legs kind of starting right here. Okay, so this would be like somebody's 9-pack. They have a 9-pack. All right. All right, and they all have a specific term associated with them. Well, right here in the middle, you've got where your belly button is. Okay, so that one's kind of easy to remember. That's where your umbilical cord used to come out, so that's the umbilical region. Okay, and what does the prefix epi mean? Above, right? So we have epigastric above it.
Would your liver be the right epigastric?
Well, we got a different term for that, but if that was it, then that would be a good term. But no. Yeah, so your liver lies mostly over here. Okay, but that's called, what's the, I'll just say, all right, so this is hypochondriac. Okay, which is also the term for somebody who thinks they're sick all the time. But this chondro is referring to the cartilage in the ribs, right? So you have a lot of cartilage right there. So it's below that cartilaginous portion of your ribs.
And that's where the liver's at?
And that's where the liver's at. Some of it stretches into the epigastric as well.
That's the
Right. All right, and this is something you're going to have to get used to. When you're looking at some a person specimen in anatomical position, right? It's like looking into the mirror. So their right is your left, okay? It's not, I don't think it's so confusing when you're looking at maybe a full specimen or full cadaver, but when you're looking at like an individual heart where you can't see their arms or legs, you have to remember you got to turn yourself around. Right is left and left is right, okay? All right, so that's right hypochondriac. This is left hypochondriac. Okay, and then moving down from there, you have a section of vertebrae right in there below your ribs, which is a common area for lots of back injuries. And what are those vertebrae called? Lumbar, right? So this is left lumbar. And right lumbar. Okay. And then moving down from there, still have our right and left. Okay, and this is just a term that I don't know really makes sense. But this is iliac. You do have some blood vessels in there, which are called iliac because I don't know which came first. And then below the below the viscera, below the stomach, hypogastric. This is also sometimes called inguinal. Okay, but those are your 9 terms.
Are those 2 words, hypogastric, or is it just one?
Yeah, it's 2 words, so I can type it there.
Where would be the reproductive organs?
Right, so they would be, well, depending on if you're male or female, right? But males would be hanging below the inguinal region, and females would be in that hypogastric region. Okay, but then would extend upward from there. All right, so do you guys have these down? Okay. All right, so for the next few minutes, I want you guys to play tic-tac-toe with your friend. Over these individually, but you will be responsible to know these. And we got a little game we're going to play with them in a bit. But essentially, you kind of have to relearn some of your body parts. Shoulder is easy. We all know the gluteus, okay? But a lot of these other ones are not your common terms for, the parts of your body, okay? We'll learn these in lab as well. But this figure is a good one to know. Go through this. I have a worksheet that has everything all blanked out, so you can go through and test yourself over and over again. Okay? But why don't you, for the next few minutes, kind of go over these, and you can, if you need a point of reference, you all have bodies, so you can touch different parts of your bodies and go through the different parts. Don't touch anyone else's body, okay? You can touch your own. And then I'm gonna get the things together. We're gonna play a little game with this.